Hello, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, the majority of Palestinian youth supports attacks against Israelis. Iran is working on building new nuclear plants. And ILTV takes to the streets to ask Israelis what they think about Game of Thrones. I'm Denise Wood here with the latest news in Israel. We told you yesterday about how 83 U.S. senators have come together to sign a letter urging President Obama to substantially enhance Israel's military aid package. And now the White House is hitting back. The letter calls for a long-term agreement to help Israel with its defense challenges, and it was initiated by Republican Senator Lindsey Graham and Democratic Senator Chris Coons. Republican presidential candidate Ted Cruz also signed the letter, and Democratic candidate Bernie Sanders did not. The White House is now hitting back and says its offer to Israel would be the largest military aid package ever given to any country in American history. The White House official statement is apparently an attempt to temper Israel's requests, saying they shouldn't ask for more. Currently, the aid package to Israel is $3 billion per year. Despite America's willingness to increase that, Jerusalem reportedly wants a substantial raise to $5 billion a year, due to the country's increasing security needs in recent years. But it's a sum many Americans say is beyond their capabilities in such a tight budgetary environment. As the wave of terror continues, many in Israel have been asking what exactly is causing it, and do the majority of Palestinians support it? And it looks like we finally have an answer. A new poll shows that the majority of Palestinian youth support terror attacks against Israel. The Jerusalem Media and Communication Center recently conducted a massive poll in the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza, revealing that more than 60% of Palestinian youth support attacks against Israelis. 67% of respondents said diplomacy won't solve the conflict, and 69% say Israelis and Palestinians can't solve the conflict on their own. The poll also showed that 58% of Palestinians between the ages of 15 and 29 support stabbing attacks. While these numbers might sound surprising, they appear to reflect sentiments by some of the Palestinian population. The Palestinian Authority and population in general refers to slain terrorists as martyrs, which is seen as an element of Palestinian culture. Abd al-Hamid Abu Srour was a terrorist that injured 20 in last week's bus bombing in Jerusalem, and in a recent interview, his parents blame his actions on Israel. Srour's father is blaming the attack on Israel, saying that Israelis led the younger generation of Palestinians to commit terror attacks. He claims that the Palestinians' lack of job opportunity or hope for a future is leading them to carry out the violent attacks, and again says Israelis are to blame. Srour's mother also claims her son's act was self-defense. Iran says it's working to expand its civilian nuclear program, and it's looking to the European Union for help. The Atomic Energy Organization of Iran says it's trying to build ties with the European Union, and especially with countries that can help them with their civilian nuclear program. The organization says it's particularly interested in working with the Czech Republic and Slovakia because of their nuclear expertise. The organization's chief, Ali Akbar Salehi, is even visiting the two countries next week to further talks about building new nuclear power plants. The organization says Iran is working hard to build relations with countries that have nuclear knowledge, and Russia is even considering buying 40 tons of heavy water from Iran, which is used in producing nuclear matter. The water itself isn't radioactive, but it is used to make an atomic bomb. In the 2015 nuclear agreement, Iran agreed to get rid of its stockpile of nuclear water. Salehi says Iran is also in talks with the European Union to enhance nuclear cooperation, including a possible joint project at the Fordo uranium enrichment plant. He claims the two groups are also planning for a joint Iranian and EU advanced nuclear center, which would be used to provide nuclear expertise to the Middle East region. Israel is known as the startup nation and a high-tech capital, but it's also known for its high cost of living and the challenges that brings. So how can you really tell what the Israeli economy is like? Ronen Avigdor is a financial market expert, and he's here to tell us more about the state of the Israeli economy and what we can expect it to look like in the future. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Denise.
So first of all, we see there was a tax surplus in the first quarter of 2016. What does that mean, and what does it say about the Israeli economy?
It's actually good news. The government's income from taxes is higher than expected. It was in the first quarter of 2016, and also it has been a trend since 2009. So each and every year, the income is higher. Main reasons of this good news is actually more and more deals in the housing industry. People are buying apartments and are paying tax. and also various acquisitions of Israeli high-tech companies by leading international companies, which produces taxes to the government, and also the fundamental growth of the Israeli industry and markets.
So it sounds like the Israeli economy, it's sounding like it's pretty strong, and we're looking at the world economy and seeing that it's somewhat fragile, at least most experts are saying that. So what can we really assume about the Israeli economy?
It's actually better. I mean, even if you judge it by itself, and especially if you compare it to other advanced economies, countries. For instance, the growth rate of the GDP in Israel is roughly 3% and stable, and it is getting better. Unemployment is very low, actually at its lower point, roughly 5%, and also participation in the labor force is very high, above 70%, which is considered a good data. And also, if you look at the budget deficit, it is very low. The official target is 2.9% per year, and we're actually around 2% now and declining. One of the best figures, one of the best performance of the Israeli economy if you compare it to any other companies.
So if you had to break it down and say some of the most basic things about the Israeli economy, what would you say?
Well, first of all, it's a paradise for entrepreneurs and for innovations. And that's a very important part of our economy. Second of all, the Israeli economy is above average educated, and it is still young as far as participation in the workforce. Those two figures combined with the fundamentals of Israel makes it a very strong economy if you compare it to any other economy.
Sure. What are some of the challenges that you would say are facing the Israeli economy?
Well, first of all, we are not an isolated island. Israeli economy depends heavily upon export. I think about 50% of our GDP comes from export.
Wow.
That's why if Chinese market, if the US market, if the European economy are weak, then necessarily it influences us. So we are in a very delicate position. Second reason is that the level of inequality in Israel is relatively high. Now, this is an economic problem, not just a social problem, because if you invest in a social environment, if you try to make the inequality lower, it is a worthwhile investment as far as economics, because then the Israeli consumer has more money to spend, then therefore the private consumption is up, and therefore the growth is up. So it's actually the two challenges is the export, the dependency of export, and the need to lower the income inequality.
Sure. And so for someone, if we have any viewers perhaps that are thinking of moving to Israel and they're concerned about the economy, what are some advantages or disadvantages that they should know about?
Well, it is understandable that people have anxieties, and fears because still you leave your country, you go to a new place. It's understandable. Basically, as far as the economics is concerned, I don't see any dramatic problem. Israel is very friendly to its new immigrants, especially from the US. There are many tax breaks, and you get help with education, you get help with the acquiring apartments, schools, and everything. I think the main obstacles is probably psychological and cultural differences. It's a totally different ball game, as they say, sure. And you need to adjust. And that's why it's recommended to do it, step by step, and not just on the spur of a moment decision. But basically, as far as economics, I think terms are fairly favorable.
Well, fantastic. Thank you. You've given us a lot to think about. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Israel has never had a triathlete compete in the Olympics, but that might be about to change. One Israeli competitor recently competed in a South African triathlon, and his time is so good it might be sending him to Rio this summer. Ron Darmon is an Israeli triathlete who recently finished 18th in a competition in South Africa with some really impressive times. He finished the swimming section in 9 minutes and 39 seconds, the biking section in 29 minutes and 12 seconds, and the run in 14 minutes and 54 seconds. In fact, his times are so good that it looks like he might be qualifying for the Summer Olympics in Rio, and not a second too early. The Olympic qualifying list closed in 3 short weeks, and he won enough points to put him in 46th place for the Olympics. But there's still some hurdles Darmon will need to pass if he wants to compete. According to Olympic rules, only 55 triathletes can compete, and right now his spot is safe. But there's still 2 more competitions where athletes could qualify before the closing date, meaning Darmon's time needs to stay good enough to qualify. There is one thing working in Darmon's favor. Of the 55 triathletes who qualify, only 3 can be from the same country. That means that because Darmon is the first and only Israeli to qualify for the event, he would beat out runners from other countries if their country already had 3 higher-placed competitors. We'll know the final verdict on May 15th when the qualifying list closes, but it certainly looks hopeful that Darmon will be the first ever Israeli to compete for his country. And in the meantime, Darmon says he's thrilled to make the cut, and he still can't believe it. This Sunday, Season 6 of the smash hit TV series Game of Thrones went on air, and it's safe to say the entire world is excited. But this season in particular is especially exciting for Israelis, because the show has 2 new Israeli actors joining its cast. ILTV reporter Natasha Kirchuk went out on the streets of Tel Aviv to ask the average Israeli what they think about the show's new Israeli cast members, and if they're excited for the new season.
The TV series Game of Thrones has been an international hit, especially in Israel. Today we're taking to the streets in Tel Aviv to see what Israelis have to say about the new season. How do you feel about the fact that there are 2 Israelis who are now going to be in the new season?
I didn't know.
You know, we are Israelis very patriot, so of course we like Israelis players in the kind of series.
I love hearing about Israelis that are in important shows. It makes me want to watch it more.
Anya Bookstein and Yusuf Swade will be gracing television screens around the world. But it won't be the first time for either of them. 33-year-old Bookstein is already a household name in Israel for appearing in shows like Rabies, False Flag, and The Secrets. And she's even an accomplished recording artist. Swade is also a man of many talents and is known for being a dancer, director, and actor in Israel. He was even featured in the popular American show Homeland.
Game of Thrones is loved by so many people around the world. Do you think the fact that there are Israeli actors that are going on the show is going to make people love Israel more?
Yes, I think this could help that Israeli actors are playing in movies. I think that now maybe people will see the Israeli people more differently than usually.
If it were me and I wasn't so in touch with Israel, I would definitely research the actors and say, oh, they're Israeli, they're such a good actor, it would put subconsciously a positive notion in my mind that Israelis are cool.
I'm a new Israeli person, a new Ole Hadash, and I think it's good because everyone in the world starts to hear about Israel.
I hope it's a positive role. I hope people it's a role that people will like, so people like Israelis.
I think she played diplomatic roles, more like state, someone that has presence and can show that side of Israel.
Now that we have Israeli actors playing on Game of Thrones, I couldn't help but wonder, if Game of Thrones were to be filmed in Israel, where would Israelis want to see it?
I think maybe Jerusalem. It's a very interesting place.
I guess in Jaffa, maybe there are old buildings, or that could be a great scenery.
I would say Masada, because it has that old world where it's basically the same as the Lannisters' settings.
Game of Thrones is already an incredibly popular show in Israel, but now that 2 Israeli actors have been cast on it, it's safe to say the show is on the Israeli radar more than ever. Will you be watching the next season of Game of Thrones?
Of course, now that they're playing.
No, I always watch the show. It doesn't matter if there are Israelis on the show or not.
But it gets you more excited, of course.
Yes. I'm going to see now more.
I'm Natasha Kirchuk reporting for ILTV.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. Today's word is bracha, which means blessing in Hebrew. This word is actually really important in Hebrew, and it's used for a lot of popular Hebrew phrases. The idea of blessing someone is a focal point in the Hebrew language. In fact, as soon as you enter Israel through the Ben Gurion airport, you'll see a sign saying, Bruchim Habayim, or blessed are those who enter. In other words, welcome. If you're writing a nice card or blessing to give someone at a wedding or birthday party, it's also called a bracha. And it's also not uncommon to hear older Israelis saying Baruch Hashem, or blessed be the Lord, which literally means thanks be to God. You can see from these examples that Hebrew is all about making people feel blessed, and that might help explain why Israelis are so warm and welcoming. Let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Today it's scorching in Tel Aviv with a high of 94 degrees. It should cool off significantly tomorrow with a high of 74 degrees and partly cloudy skies. All right, everybody, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.76 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to check out our evening update every night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks for watching, and see you tonight.